The Council's Mockery, a newcomer's test. In the heart of the Galactic Council's grand chamber, the air hummed with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional soft click of alien claws or the distant flutter of enormous wings. Above, in the high ceilings that seemed to stretch into infinity, the shimmering stars of 1,000 distant worlds twinkled through massive windows. The chamber was designed not just to impress, but to intimidate, an architectural monument meant to dwarf anyone who dared stand before the galaxy's mightiest representatives. At the center of the room, floating like a speck of dust in the vast expanse, was an image of Earth's finest starship, the HFY Defender. It appeared small, insignificant even, compared to the monstrous alien warships that adorned the Council's fleet. To the gathered representatives, the ship was a joke, barely more than a blip on the radar. Ambassador James Walker stood before them, feeling the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. His gray suit, tailored perfectly for diplomatic engagements, felt far too tight now, constricting his throat as though the room itself was closing in. The vastness of the chamber, the towering alien figures perched high on their elevated platforms, each species glaring down at him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, made him feel like a child before an unforgiving class of teachers. His heart beat steadily in his chest, a rhythm that echoed like a drum in his ears. He knew this moment was crucial, and he couldn't afford to show weakness, especially in the face of such condescension. "Tell us again, Ambassador Walker," the booming voice of Council Leader Dax echoed across the chamber. His massive purple-skinned form leaned forward, eyes gleaming with a mixture of disbelief and amusement. "You expect us to believe that this is Earth's finest vessel?" The hologram of the HFY Defender flickered slightly, its sleek design far out of place among the gigantic, heavily armed ships displayed on the screens surrounding the chamber. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, packed with the latest technology Earth could muster, but to the alien eyes of the Council, it was barely more than a toy. Walker held his ground, his voice unwavering despite the mockery. "Yes, Council Leader, you are looking at Earth's finest, our symbol of strength and peace." He felt the weight of his words, but there was a calmness beneath the surface of his resolve. He wasn't just defending a ship, he was defending humanity's place in the galaxy. Dax's multiple eyes blinked, each eye giving the impression of an individual thought process as he tilted his head, considering Walker's words. "Strength? Peace." He let out a dry chuckle that echoed through the chamber. "What are you suggesting? That this vessel, this defender, could stand against our fleets, against the might of the Council's collective power?" The room erupted in laughter, sharp and dismissive. Representatives of various alien species, with their strange, alien features, six-legged insectoids, translucent beings with shifting forms, and towering reptilian warriors, chuckled, their amusement filling the air. It felt like a wave crashing down on Walker, one that threatened to drown his resolve. A tall insectoid alien, its body covered in iridescent chitin, clicked its mandibles in what passed for laughter in their species. "Look at their weapon mounts," it chittered, its voice like the sound of dry leaves scraping across stone. "Like stingers on a baby pest." "How quaint." Ambassador Walker's face flushed, but he managed to keep his composure. He was used to dealing with mockery, especially in the political arena, but never on this scale. The alien species of the Council had long since advanced beyond humanity's technological reach, or so they thought. What they failed to realize was that Earth's strength didn't lie in size or raw firepower. It lay in human ingenuity, creativity, and resilience. He took a slow breath and spoke again, his voice calm but with an edge of steel beneath it. "It is true that our fleet may not yet match the size of yours, but size isn't everything, Council Leader. The greatest predators in nature are often the smallest, and we, humans, have been surviving and thriving on a death world for centuries." Another alien, a tentacled being with translucent skin that shimmered in the light, snorted with derision. "Surviving?" it asked, its voice dripping with disdain. "You barely possess faster-than-light technology, and your weaponry looks no more advanced than our children's toys. Do you really expect us to take your species seriously? You're primitive, a curiosity at best." The words stung, but Walker didn't flinch. He had known this was coming. He had known that the Council would dismiss humanity as weak, as a species too young and too unpolished to stand among the galactic giants. But that was precisely why they needed to see this through, why Earth needed to be at the table. The consequences of rejection weren't just diplomatic. They were existential. "You underestimate us," Walker replied, his voice gaining strength. "We may not have the largest ships, the most advanced technology, but we have something that you do not: human ingenuity. The ability to think beyond what is possible. The will to adapt, to overcome, to survive. We have a unique set of skills that make us valuable allies, if you would only open your minds." But Dax wasn't listening. He had already made up his mind. "Ambassador Walker, we have reviewed your petition for full membership. While we are willing to consider Earth as a protectorate, full membership is another matter. Your fleet is insufficient. Your technology, primitive." The word protectorate hit Walker like a slap in the face. The Council wasn't offering cooperation. They were offering subjugation. Earth, in their eyes, would remain nothing more than a colony, a resource to be controlled. Walker's stomach twisted with disgust. "Protectorate," Walker repeated, his voice sharp. "We are a sovereign species, council leader, not a ward to be babysat by your collective power." "Of course," Dax said smoothly, his lips curling into a false smile. "We would never imply otherwise. You may return to your tiny ship. We will send our official response soon. Perhaps next time, you'll bring something a little more impressive." As Walker turned to leave the chamber, the alien laughter began again, louder this time. They didn't even bother to hide their mockery anymore. It was clear. Earth wasn't just being dismissed. It was being belittled, ridiculed, and treated as if it were beneath notice. Back aboard the ESS Defender, Walker stood at the viewport, staring out into the black expanse of space, his mind whirring with a mix of anger and determination. "They don't realize what they've just done," he muttered to Captain Robert Stone, who stood beside him, his face grim. "They've made a mistake, sir," Stone replied, his voice low. "A big one." Walker nodded, his expression hardening. "It's time to show them why humanity has survived on a death world for centuries. It's time to show them that we are not to be underestimated. Earth's hidden strength. Protocol Omega." 3 months had passed since Ambassador Walker and Captain Stone's meeting with the Galactic Council, and the dust had settled in the wake of their dismissal. To the outside world, it appeared that Earth had accepted its role as a mere protectorate, as expected. But in the corridors of power, in the depths of humanity's military infrastructure, things were happening that the Council could never have predicted. Earth's orbital shipyards were a hive of activity, far beyond the scope of what any alien intelligence could have anticipated. Hidden beneath the layers of bureaucracy and public appearances, the world's greatest minds and military strategists were preparing for something much larger than just defense. They were preparing for war. And not just any war, but one that would surprise the entire galaxy. Captain Robert Stone stood in the observation deck of Luna Base, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the ships take shape before him. The vastness of the shipyard stretched out below, where hundreds of workers swarmed over the hulks of what seemed like ordinary cargo ships and freighters, welding and modifying them with precision. These weren't just civilian vessels. These were the future of Earth's military might, ships designed to exploit the very weaknesses the Council had mocked just months before. Stone's eyes narrowed as he scanned the scene. It was a strange sight, a blend of human ingenuity and alien underestimation. The Council still thought Earth was building nothing more than civilian transports, ships to ferry goods from one planet to another. They had no idea that these vessels were about to become far more lethal than any of their own warships. The aliens had laughed at the tiny EF's defender. Now, Earth's entire fleet would become a force to be reckoned with. "Sir," came the voice of Officer Tom Miller, cutting through Stone's thoughts. The officer approached, holding a digital tablet in his hands, his face grim. "We've got new intel. The Council's military leadership is gathering in secret. They're planning something big, the pacification of Earth." Stone's face tightened at the mention of the plan. Pacification. He repeated under his breath, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. A nice word for conquest. Miller nodded solemnly. "They intend to send a fleet to subdue us, to protect us from ourselves, as they put it. A fleet of dreadnoughts, fully armed, and with a mandate to make Earth a part of the collective whether we like it or not." Stone's fists clenched at his sides. The Council saw Earth as little more than a primitive species, a world ripe for annexation. What they didn't know was that humanity's entire history had been shaped by fighting against the odds, by surviving when survival seemed impossible. And now, they were about to see just how far the determination would take them. "What's our status?" Stone asked, his voice steady but firm. Miller tapped a few buttons on his tablet, bringing up a holographic display that showed the status of the fleet. "All combat systems are being installed across the fleet. It's routine maintenance, or at least that's what the Council thinks. The truth is, our ships are being outfitted with the latest in human technology. The Defender is already receiving its upgrades. What the Council thinks are simple armor plates are actually housing new missile systems capable of overwhelming their shields." Stone nodded, a grim smile forming on his lips. "They'll never know what hit them." "Commander Reed is ready to begin training with the new combat tactics," Miller continued, "and Admiral Torres is finalizing the modifications to the fusion drives. Once we have everything in place, we'll be ready. We'll have the speed and maneuverability to outclass their ships." As the holographic display flickered and shifted, showing human ships darting around alien warships in a simulated battle, Stone could see the possibilities opening up before them. Humanity wasn't going to fight the Council's massive ships on their own terms. No, they were going to use their greatest asset, agility. The Wolfpack Protocol, developed by the brilliant Admiral Torres, would turn the tables completely. "Instead of fighting head-on," Miller explained, "we'll use our ships in coordinated groups of 5. Each group will move as a single unit, darting in and out of the blind spots of their larger vessels, striking at critical systems while avoiding the enemy's heavier fire. They're used to fighting ships as big as their own. We'll make them regret not taking us seriously." Stone turned toward the observation window, his eyes scanning the fleet below. There was a sense of pride in his chest now, pride in his people, in their ability to adapt and fight when the odds were stacked against them. The Council had underestimated humanity, and that was going to cost them dearly. "How are the new ships coming along?" Stone asked. "They're almost ready," Miller replied. "And the new fusion drives will give us 3 times the maneuverability of the Council's dreadnoughts. They'll never be able to keep up with us." Stone chuckled darkly. "Let them think we're weak. Let them think we're primitive. When the time comes, they'll see just how wrong they were." Just as the final words left his mouth, an alarm beeped sharply, cutting through the tense air in the command center. Miller glanced at the screen, his face turning pale. "Sir, we have a Council scout ship approaching Luna orbit. It's one of their reconnaissance vessels." Stone's gaze hardened. Let them see what they want to see. Routine maintenance. If they think we're still just a colony, let them be fooled. He turned toward the command center, his voice carrying authority. "Prepare for a full inspection. Let them know we're still small, still weak, still primitive." The Council ship moved slowly across the vast expanse of the shipyards, its sensors sweeping the area like a predator circling its prey. It passed over the human ships with little more than a passing glance, its crew too busy assessing what they believed were insignificant vessels. And yet, beneath the surface, things were changing. While the Council took its time inspecting what they thought was a mundane collection of cargo ships, the ESA Defender was receiving its final upgrades. The new missile systems were integrated, the additional armor layers reinforced, and the fusion drives tested. All of it hidden in plain sight. Stone watched as the scout ship passed overhead. For a moment, he almost felt sorry for them. They had no idea what they were walking into. The Wolfpack strikes, preparing for the final showdown. The time had come. The clock was ticking down to Earth's final chance to prove itself to the Galactic Council, while the Council's massive fleet gathered in secret, preparing to pacify the upstart species. Earth's military forces were putting the final touches on their own response, a force that would surprise the galaxy in ways they never expected. Captain Robert Stone paced the command deck of the ESA's Defender, his boots clicking softly against the metal floor. The ship had been completely reconfigured. Its size may have remained modest, but its capabilities were now on par with any dreadnought in the galaxy. The new weapons systems hummed with barely contained power, ready to unleash a storm on the unsuspecting Council ships. But the real innovation lay in the tactics they'd developed, the strategies that would turn Earth's primitive fleet into a terrifying force. Stone glanced up at the holographic display that showed the positions of both the Earth Defense Fleet and the Council's ships. The Council was still in the dark. They thought they had everything figured out. Big, slow ships that could overwhelm the human fleet with sheer firepower. What they didn't realize was that Earth's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt, to survive against the odds. Behind Stone, the rest of the command crew was hard at work, finalizing the details of the Wolfpack protocol. The key to this strategy was speed and surprise. While the Council's ships were big and powerful, they were slow, lumbering giants. They relied on sheer firepower and their size to intimidate smaller opponents. Earth's new fleet would exploit this weakness. "Status report, Officer Miller," Stone asked, turning to the young officer standing at the control console. Miller looked up, his expression serious but determined. "We're ready, Captain. The fleet is fully equipped, and all ships have undergone the final upgrades. The new fusion drives are operational, and the Wolfpack protocol has been drilled in every command center. We're ready to strike." Stone nodded, his lips curling into a tight smile. "Good. We'll need that speed. Let's make sure the Council realizes they've underestimated us." Just then, Admiral Reed entered the command deck. His sharp eyes immediately scanned the situation, and he approached Stone with a quiet confidence that came only from years of experience. "We've just received a report from our scouts," Reed said, his voice low but steady. "The Council fleet is assembling in position. They're preparing for their final push, whatever they think it is." Stone's eyes hardened. "They're planning to invade Earth. They'll send their dreadnoughts to subdue us, make an example of our planet. The pacification, as they call it. But they don't realize that we're not going to sit back and take it." "No, we're not," Reed said, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "They think we're still the underdogs. Let's remind them why they should never underestimate a species that survived on a death world." Stone turned back to the holographic display. The Earth Defense Fleet was already positioned, the ships spread out in a formation designed for maximum efficiency and speed. 5 ships, each armed to the teeth, would make up each Wolfpack unit. Each group would operate as a single entity, coordinating their attacks in ways that would confuse and overwhelm the enemy's massive sensors. "Ready the fleet for launch," Stone ordered, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We hit them fast, hit them hard, and don't give them a chance to retaliate. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are." As the fleet prepared to launch, the tension on the command deck grew palpable. The crews had trained for this moment for months. The drills, the simulations, the endless hours spent perfecting every maneuver, all of it had led up to this. And now, as the time of reckoning approached, there was no turning back. At the same time, on the distant world of the Galactic Council, Leaders gathered to discuss what they believed was their final step in the process of pacifying Earth. Their spies had informed them that humanity was still preparing its fleet, but they believed that their overwhelming firepower would crush any resistance. The tiny ships of Earth were nothing more than a nuisance, they thought, a temporary inconvenience before the true power of the Galactic Order arrived to restore peace. Council leader Dax sat at the head of the table, his multiple eyes blinking with impatience. The Earthlings continue to resist. We will show them the strength of our fleets. Once we have pacified their planet, they will learn their place among the galactic nations. The other council members nodded in agreement, eager to finalize their plans and set their ships in motion. The pacification would be swift. They were sure of it. But as the council prepared to send their ships toward Earth, they remained blissfully unaware that they were walking straight into a trap. Humanity had no intention of surrendering. The Wolfpack Protocol was not just a tactic, it was a message. A message that Earth would never be anyone's subordinate. As Stone's fleet broke orbit, ready to engage, the first shots were fired, not in anger, but in the silent promise of what was to come. They were not just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for their place in the galaxy. The first clash. A Wolfpack unleashed. The silence of space was broken by the thunderous roar of engines as the Earth Defense Fleet, now fully mobilized, cut through the void. Each ship, once underestimated for its size, now moved with deadly precision. Tiny compared to the gargantuan ships of the Galactic Council, they were like ants swarming an unsuspecting giant. The strategy was simple, yet elegant. 5 ships, each one a cog in a finely tuned machine, would strike fast and hard, delivering deadly blows to a far more powerful opponent. Captain Robert Stone stood at the command center of the ESA Defender, his eyes locked onto the holographic display in front of him. It showed the exact positions of their fleet and the approaching council ships. The distance between them was closing fast, and every second that passed tightened the noose. The Wolfpack was about to enter the council's territory. "Captain, we're in range." Officer Miller's voice crackled through the comm. "We have full confirmation. The council's dreadnoughts are now within our sight." Stone nodded grimly. "Let's make this count," he muttered. Behind him, Admiral Reed watched silently, his expression unreadable. The tactical advantage of their small ships was still a gamble. The Council's ships were nearly 10 times their size and capable of devastating firepower. But Reed had faith in the tactics they had developed over the last few months. They had trained for this moment in countless simulations, each more daring than the last. The Council had no idea what was coming. At that very moment, the Council's flagship, the Hesperos, led the charge. Its hull gleamed in the distant light of the nearby star, an intimidating beacon of power. A massive alien warship that could wipe entire fleets from existence with a single shot, the Hesperos had been designed to inspire fear. It was flanked by 5 other warships, each one a formidable opponent in its own right. Yet, despite the colossal strength of these ships, there was something about them that the Earthlings understood better than anyone else. They were slow. The sheer size of the Council's fleet made them cumbersome, their massive weapons systems unable to track fast-moving targets. The Earth fleet, small and nimble, was going to exploit that weakness to the fullest. "Activate Wolfpack Protocol," Stone ordered sharply. Immediately, 5 ships in the Earth fleet broke off from the main group, weaving around each other in perfect synchronization. It was beautiful, almost elegant. The ships darted in and out of the shadows of the Council dreadnoughts, moving like a swarm of angry hornets. A chorus of alarms blared across the deck as the Council ships began to realize they were under attack. Their enormous weapons turrets swiveled, trying to track the smaller ships, but it was too late. The first barrage of missiles, newly developed, stealthy, and faster than the Council ships could react to, slammed into the Hesperos. The hull of the alien ship groaned under the impact, massive explosions rocking its structure. The Council's ship was far from destroyed, but it was now bleeding energy and fire. Direct hit, Shields are down on their port side," Officer Miller shouted, his voice full of exhilaration. Stone allowed himself a brief smile. The Hesperos had been caught off guard, its vast defensive systems rendered useless against the speed and unpredictability of the Wolfpack. But this was only the beginning. There were still more ships to neutralize. "Keep the pressure on," Stone commanded, leaning forward. "Wolfpack Alpha, change course. Target their engines." In the blink of an eye, the 5 ships split, each one darting in different directions, their missiles streaking toward the Council fleet with deadly accuracy. The Council ships, far too slow to track their targets, fired back in retaliation, but they were aiming at ghosts. "Missile lock acquired," one of the ship commanders called out over the comm. A second barrage of missiles streaked through space, slamming into the Hespero's starboard side. Massive portions of the ship's armor tore away, exposing its interior. The ship shuddered violently, its shields flickering back to life in a desperate attempt to repel the incoming fire. "They're crippled. Their engines are failing," Reed said with a grin, watching the unfolding battle. "Let's keep them off balance," Stone replied. "Send in the second wave." As the Defender and its fleet executed their next move, a wave of smaller Earth ships launched from the fleet's core, their precision targeting systems now locked onto the remaining Council ships. They targeted weak points, areas where the Council had grown complacent, areas that had never been threatened before. Stone's eyes narrowed as he watched the Hesperos struggle to regain control. The larger ship was now vulnerable, crippled, and losing power. But even though the tide had turned in their favor, there was no time to relax. The Wolfpack had only one goal: to dismantle the Council's forces and show them that underestimating humanity would be their downfall. Over on the Hesperos, Council leader Dax bellowed orders to his officers, trying in vain to maintain control of the situation. His 6 eyes blinked in frustration as the ship's engines failed to respond. "Prepare for the next wave. Regroup our forces," Dax screamed, his voice amplified by the surrounding walls. The Council's pride had been wounded, but it was far from broken. The real fight was just beginning. Back aboard the Defender, Stone's grip on the command chair tightened as a new report flashed across his screen. Their small ships had done immense damage, but the real question was, could they finish what they had started? "We've inflicted significant damage, but there's more to come," Stone said calmly, his mind racing through the possibilities. "Get ready for the final push. We're not backing down now." As Stone spoke, the rest of the fleet moved in for the kill. It was clear now that this wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a battle for dominance. The Wolfpack had struck, and now it was time to finish the fight. The tide turns, a fight for survival. The battle had raged for hours, the quiet of space replaced by the flashing lights of explosions and the crackle of energy shields under duress. The Wolfpack's strategy had been devastatingly effective, outmaneuvering the Council's massive ships, delivering pinpoint missile strikes, and exploiting every weakness the arrogant aliens had overlooked. Yet, despite the damage, the fight was far from over. The tide was beginning to turn, and not in the favor of Earth. On the Defender's command deck, Captain Robert Stone watched in grim silence as the status reports flashed across the screen. The Council ships were regrouping, their systems slowly coming back online. Their retaliation had been fierce. Massive beams of energy lanced through the blackness of space, slamming into Earth's ships with unrelenting fury. The Earth fleet had sustained damage, though nothing crippling yet. But Stone could feel the pressure mounting. "They're adapting," Officer Miller said, his voice taut with tension. "Their fleet is adjusting to our tactics. They've identified our patterns and are countering our movements." Stone turned to face his crew, his jaw set in determination. The Wolfpack tactics, which had been so effective at first, were starting to lose their edge. The Council had been humiliated, and their pride had now turned into ruthless anger. They were adjusting their tactics, splitting up their ships into smaller formations, and focusing fire on individual Earth ships, overwhelming their defenses one by one. "Keep the pressure on," Stone ordered, but his voice lacked the usual confidence. "We've been underestimating them for too long. It's time to change the game." At that very moment, Admiral Reed strode onto the command deck, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. Despite the gravity of the situation, he remained remarkably calm, his years of experience in warfare giving him a steadiness that was a welcome relief to the crew. "Captain, we've got a bigger problem," Reed said. "The Council isn't just fighting us. They're coming for Earth itself. Our scouts just picked up a massive fleet on an intercept course. The Hesperos is sending reinforcements, much larger ships." Stone felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The Council was doubling down. They had underestimated Earth once before, but they had learned. And now, they were bringing in the full weight of their might. "How long until they arrive?" Stone asked, already calculating the possibilities. 2 days, Reed replied. "Maybe less. We don't have the resources to face that kind of fleet head-on. We need to retreat and regroup, or we risk losing everything." Stone's mind raced. Retreat wasn't an option. Not when they were so close to victory. The Earth fleet had already proven itself capable of standing up to the Council's might. But this was a different kind of enemy. A force that wouldn't be swayed by tactics or the underestimation of its foe. "We fight. We're not backing down," Stone said, his voice low but filled with conviction. "But we need to turn the tables. We need a new strategy." "Sir, I got something," Officer Miller interrupted. His eyes were wide, his fingers flying across the console as he pulled up a new tactical readout. "This is a signal we intercepted from the Council's fleet. It's encrypted, but it's not like their usual comms. It's a command transmission." Stone stepped forward, leaning over Miller's shoulder. "What is it? What are they saying?" Miller decoded the transmission, his face going pale as the final piece clicked into place. "They're preparing a planet-destroying weapon, a superweapon designed to wipe Earth off the map. They're sending it through hyperspace, and it will arrive in less than 24 hours. A stunned silence fell over the command deck. Stone's heart raced, but his mind stayed focused. The Council had been calculating everything. They hadn't just underestimated Earth's fleet. They had been planning for the worst-case scenario, and they had a weapon that could obliterate everything humanity had worked so hard to build. But they didn't know one thing. Humanity had faced extinction before, and it was that very instinct for survival that had forged their greatest victories. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Stone ordered, his voice calm, as if nothing had changed. "Activate Omega Protocol. It's time to show the Council just how far we'll go to defend our home." As the crew scrambled to prepare for the next phase of the battle, Captain Stone turned to Admiral Reed, a grim smile on his face. "They're underestimating us again," Stone said. "They think we'll run. But humanity doesn't run. We fight." Meanwhile, deep within the heart of the Council fleet, Council leader Dax paced the command deck of the Hesperos, fury in his 6 eyes as he received the latest report from his subordinates. Earth's ships had caused them significant damage, but that was nothing compared to the threat humanity now posed. "Activate the exterminator," Dax commanded, his voice cold and deliberate. "Destroy Earth. We can't allow this insolence to go unanswered." On the other side of the galaxy, the massive superweapon, the exterminator, had begun its journey. An unstoppable force of destruction that could wipe entire civilizations off the face of the map. Its trajectory was locked. Earth was the target. But Earth wasn't the kind of place you could just erase. Omega Protocol. The last stand. The countdown had begun. On the Defender, Captain Stone's face remained as hard as stone itself. The crew had scrambled to activate Omega Protocol, but time was slipping away faster than they could prepare. The Council's superweapon, a colossal planet-shattering device known as the Exterminator, was less than 12 hours from arrival. The mission was clear. Earth's survival depended on stopping that weapon, no matter the cost. The command deck buzzed with activity as the crew worked tirelessly. Officer Miller had identified the exterminator's hyperspace route, and the data was being passed to every ship in Earth's fleet. "We have one shot at this, people," Stone said, his voice cutting through the tension. "One shot to take it down before it reaches Earth." Admiral Reed stood beside Stone, studying the holographic display with a sharp, calculating gaze. "We need to intercept it in deep space before it can make its final jump into Earth's atmosphere. If we let it through, there's no coming back." "How?" Miller's voice trembled with the weight of their task. "That thing's massive. It's a superweapon unlike anything we've ever seen. Even our best fighters will be nothing against it." "That's why we need the Wolfpack," Stone replied. His gaze was unyielding. "We've been fighting their arrogance for months. Now we turn it into their mistake. They think we're small. They think we're weak. It's time to show them how wrong they are." The tension in the air was palpable as the plan took shape. The Defender would lead the charge, flanked by a handful of Earth's most elite fighters. Their mission was simple: get close enough to disable the exterminator, even if it meant sacrificing everything to do so. "Prepare the fleet for the final assault," Stone ordered. "This is it. Once we jump, there's no turning back." Hours later, the Earth fleet had arrived at the designated coordinates in deep space, a vast expanse of stars and nothingness stretching in every direction. There was no time to lose. The exterminator was on its final approach. Stone stood at the helm of the Defender, his fingers gripping the armrests of his chair. "Status report," he barked. "We're in position," Officer Miller said, his voice steady but strained. "The exterminator is on course. It's too far out for conventional weapons to reach. We'll have to close the distance before it jumps to Earth." "We've trained for this," Stone replied, the calm of his voice belying the gravity of the situation. "Wolfpack, on my mark. We'll hit them fast, hit them hard, and hit them where it hurts." A series of encrypted communications flickered across the screens, signaling that the Wolfpack fighters had linked up with the Defender, forming a tight, coordinated formation. The ships were primed, weapons hot, ready for the final push. And then Stone saw it. The exterminator. It was monstrous, a shadow that stretched across the dark expanse, its sheer size dwarfing the Earth fleet. A black-hulled titan with glowing crimson veins running through its surface, pulsing with energy. It was far beyond anything humanity had encountered. But Stone didn't flinch. In the face of impossible odds, humanity didn't flinch. "Now!" Stone shouted. The Defender and its fleet surged forward, cutting through the vacuum with calculated precision. The exterminator was on a straight course to Earth's atmosphere, and its defenses were formidable. Its energy shields flickered, rippling in response to the first wave of human fire, but Stone knew they had no chance of breaking them from this distance. As the Earth ships closed in, the Council ships protecting the exterminator moved to intercept. The battle began in a flash of weapons fire and shuddering impacts. Tiny Earth ships darted through the chaos, launching missiles and blinding laser beams in all directions. "Stay focused." Captain Stone's voice rang through the comms. "Our target is the core of the exterminator. We need to breach its outer shell and disable the reactor." The battle was fierce. Earth's ships were faster, more agile, darting through enemy lines with precision, striking at weak points in the Council ships' defenses. But the sheer number of enemy vessels was overwhelming. Stone watched as one of his Wolfpack ships disintegrated in a burst of flames, debris scattering into the dark void. The Defender continued its assault, pushing toward the exterminator. The larger Council ships opened fire, their massive energy beams streaking through space, narrowly missing the Defender. Stone's teeth ground together in concentration. They were getting closer. They had to be. "We've almost made it," Miller shouted from his station. "We're in range of their primary reactor. One more push and we can disable it." But as if on cue, a chilling voice crackled over the comms. One Stone knew all too well. "This is Council Leader Dax. I commend you, Earthlings. You have fought well, but your resistance is futile. The exterminator is unstoppable. You will be erased. Stone's jaw tightened, but he didn't hesitate. I don't think you understand, Dax. We don't lose. Not today. Not ever. He turned to Admiral Reed, who gave a silent nod. Captain, I'll take it from here. Prepare the override sequence. Stone took a deep breath. The exterminator was a weapon of unimaginable destruction, but it had one fatal flaw. It relied on a central core that could be overrun by a precise strike, and with the Earth fleet closing in, there was only one chance. I'm going in, Stone said, locking his gaze on the looming behemoth. Keep them off our back. This is for Earth. As Stone piloted the Defender through the chaos, his ship shook under enemy fire, but he didn't relent. He locked in on the exterminator's reactor core, firing everything he had. The sheer scale of the battle was overwhelming, but every weapon, every fighter, every ship had one goal: to protect Earth from annihilation. Steady, Captain. Reed's voice came through, calm as ever despite the madness. We're right behind you. Just get us through. The final seconds ticked by, the exterminator drawing closer to Earth's atmosphere with every heartbeat. Now, Stone shouted, pulling the trigger. The last hope, breaking through. The final push had begun. The Earth fleet, a ragtag assembly of what the Council had once dismissed as primitive ships, now danced and darted in a deadly ballet. They were small, they were fast, and they had nothing to lose. The exterminator, that monstrous weapon of annihilation, loomed closer with each passing second, its weapons powered up, ready to tear Earth asunder. On the Defender, Captain Stone's grip on the helm was ironclad. His knuckles were white from the strain, his mind focused with laser precision on the task at hand. The reactor core of the exterminator was within reach. All they had to do was deliver the final blow. Commander, we've got a problem. Officer Miller's voice came over the comms. The exterminator is activating its secondary defense systems. We're getting hit with concentrated energy pulses. Shields are failing. Damn it, Stone muttered, feeling the Defender shudder as another blast rocked the hull. The ship's outer sensors flickered, and a small spark of fire erupted in the corridor. We need to push through, Miller. If we don't disable that core now, we're finished. Reed's voice came through next. We've lost contact with 2 of the Wolfpack ships. They're gone, but the rest are holding firm, providing cover fire. Keep going, Stone. We're right behind you. The destruction of the Wolfpack ships weighed heavily on Stone's heart. They were human, like him, and they had given their lives in the name of survival. But the mission was not over. They couldn't let their sacrifice be in vain. In the depths of the exterminator, its alien commanders were preparing for the final stage of their invasion. They had underestimated humanity for too long, dismissing them as primitive. But now, with their superweapon on the verge of destroying Earth, they were beginning to question whether this would truly be their victory. Council leader Dax stood in the heart of the command center, watching the live feeds of the battle unfolding. His many eyes blinked in annoyance as he observed the human ships relentlessly attacking, refusing to give up. How long until we reach Earth? He growled. 5 minutes, and Aide responded, nervously glancing at the data. Dax's lips curled into a sneer. No matter. The exterminator will cleanse this planet, and then we can move on to the next conquest. Let them die with their tiny ships. Their arrogance will be their undoing. But as Dax turned his gaze back to the holographic display, something unexpected caught his eye. The Defender, the human vessel, had breached the outer perimeter of the exterminator's defenses. A series of devastating pulses from their weapons hit one of the external generator shields. It flared brightly, and the shield began to crack. Dax's smile faltered. No, impossible. Back aboard the Defender, Captain Stone's heart raced. His team had found a weak spot in the exterminator's outer shielding. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Prepare to fire all remaining ordnance. Aim for the core. Captain, The remaining ships are forming up, Miller said, voice steady despite the chaos. The wolf pack's still covering us. This is it. We got one shot. Stone didn't hesitate. Fire. A massive volley of missiles shot forward, tearing through space. Each one was aimed at the heart of the exterminator, where the alien commanders believed their weapon was invulnerable. As the missiles struck, a violent explosion erupted across the alien ship's surface. For a brief moment, the exterminator seemed to groan under the pressure, its shields wavering. Direct hit, Miller shouted. But it's not enough. We need to disable the core directly. Stone's mind raced. They had mere seconds before the exterminator would enter Earth's atmosphere, too close for anyone to stop it. The reactor core was deep inside the ship, heavily protected, but there was one last option. A direct assault on the exterminator's central node, the power conduit that fed the core's reactors. Stone's hand flew over the controls, activating the emergency override sequence. He turned to Reed, his voice filled with grim determination. I'm going in. Cover me. Reed's eyes widened. No, Captain, it's too risky. The core's surrounded by defenses. I don't have time for a safer option. Stone cut him off. This is the only way we stop this now. He punched in the final code, and the defender lurched forward, its engines roaring as it made a suicidal dash for the central core. The rest of the fleet followed suit, launching another series of distracting attacks as they pulled every remaining missile and laser in a coordinated effort to keep the Council ships at bay. Inside the exterminator, the alien commanders were now in full panic. The human ships had breached their most secure defenses, and there was no way to stop the defender now. Dax, his multiple eyes darting nervously, barked orders in his alien tongue, but it was too late. As the defender closed in, Stone braced himself. Every part of him screamed to pull away, but he knew there was no time for hesitation. The central node of the exterminator loomed ahead. If he could hit it, the entire ship would implode in a massive chain reaction, taking the weapon down for good. The defender shuddered under enemy fire as it made its final approach. Stone fired every available weapon, his eyes locked on the target. As the ship came within range, he engaged the final override sequence. For a split second, everything seemed to stop. The chaos of the battle, the explosions, the fire, it all faded into a silence that felt like an eternity. And then, boom! A deafening explosion shattered the quiet of space as the defender launched its final weapon. A massive missile aimed directly at the exterminator's central power conduit. The missile tore through the alien ship's protective shields and into its heart. The explosion that followed was catastrophic. The exterminator's massive hull began to crumble, the shockwave reverberating through the battlefield. Earth's fleet watched in awe as the once imposing weapon of destruction was consumed by fire and debris. The exterminator had been destroyed, but the cost was high. The defender was critically damaged, and Stone knew that they would never make it back home. But their mission was complete. Earth was safe.